Allez, bonjour à tous et bienvenue pour un petit let's play qui fera la transition avec le prochain let's play principal de la chaîne. Tout simplement puisque nous sommes samedi et que, comme vous savez, j'aime bien commencer un nouveau let's play le lundi. Et je me suis dit, ça peut être pas mal qu'on se fasse ce jeu What Remains of Edith Finch que je m'étais mis de côté, que j'avais prévu de vous présenter. Voilà, Edith Finch, on va devoir suivre plusieurs histoires d'une même famille à travers une maison. Là, on nous propose d'ouvrir le livre et découvrir un petit peu
A lot of this isn't going to make
bien
sense to you,
l'histoire.
and I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to start at the beginning, with the house.
Je vais tout simplement commencer par le début avec la maison. Ok. Donc on commence ce jeu, cette histoire.
I lived here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed inside half the rooms.
Qui nous est contée à travers un journal. J'ai vécu ici jusqu'à l'âge de 11 ans. Une maison tournée un peu...
Inside the mailbox were bills from 7 years ago, marked urgent, open immediately.
Alors dans la boîte à lettres, pendant 7 ans. Pendant 7 ans, le
I
courrier...
hadn't been back since my brother Lewis's funeral.
Alors, je n'étais pas revenue depuis l'enterrement de mon frère Lewis. Donc on incarne donc une jeune femme qui va donc voyager à travers l'histoire de sa famille.
In her will, my mother left me a key, but didn't tell me what it unlocked. Maybe she thought I'd know. Or she thought that the mystery would be enough to bring me back.
Le mystère qui va nous faire revenir. Alors le jeu, je l'ai joué une fois. J'étais passée par en bas de ma première partie. Là, je me dis, je vais passer par là. Puisque je n'avais pas eu l'occasion de voir cette partie du jeu.
No one had driven this way in a long time, but I saw a few hoof prints.
Des traces de sabots. Donc c'est un jeu qui se veut à raconter une histoire.
The truth is, even after I inherited the house, I never thought I'd come back to it.
Notre
But now I have
personnage
questions
a
about my
hérité de la
family that
maison
only the house knew the answers to.
qu'elle a hérité de cette maison quelque peu étrange.
The house was exactly like I remembered it, the way I'd been dreaming about it.
C'est pas une maison totalement classique qu'on a là. Une maison qui est toute biscornue, qui part dans tous les sens. Et on entend les grenouilles. Missing Milton Finch, donc un des enfants.
As a child, the house made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't put into words.
La maison qui la met mal à l'aise. Donc Milton Finch, puisque nous suivons la famille Finch à travers les ancêtres de notre personnage jusqu'à notre époque.
Now, as a 17-year-old, I knew exactly what those words were. I was afraid of the house.
La maison fait peur à notre personnage.
I hoped the key might unlock the front door. It didn't.
La porte ne s'ouvre pas malgré la clé.
Looking in, I felt like the house itself had been waiting for me.
Voilà, une maison qui est totalement vide, mais qui est également intrigante. Donc on repère une rampe, hein, donc je doute qu'une personne âgée ou en fauteuil roulant, au bout d'un moment, devait habiter par là. Direct, hein, on nous propose de passer.
Crawling through the doggy door used to be a lot easier when I was 11.
Donc on s'est faufilé à travers la trappe, hein, pour pouvoir rentrer.
The power had been turned off the night we left.
Donc le courant, bien sûr, est coupé puisque la maison est vide depuis 7 ans.
For the first time in years,
Donc tout est resté, hein, en 2010, janvier 2010, la dernière fois, eh bien que cette jeune femme, qui était une enfant à l'époque, eh bien était présente avec les membres de sa famille dans ce lieu.
I felt like I was home.
Elle se sent comme à la maison, oui, puisqu'elle y a vécu.
But instead of a family, there were just memories of one.
On nous présente un peu la famille pour le coup, hein, Edith, la fille, donc c'est nous, hein, cette petite fille, mais bien sûr, bien des années plus tard, Eddie et Lewis. Donc Lewis, le petit garçon qui a disparu, hein, d'où on a vu les affiches, hein. I'm loving memory. Lewis Fing. La maison qui a des petits bruits, on entend.
Like how only one restaurant would deliver to our house, so we had Chinese a lot. Or how after Lewis started working at the cannery, we all got sick of eating salmon. Except our cat, Molly.
Le chat Molly.
The table was still a wreck from the night we left.
Comme le soir de
It was
notre
like a
départ.
bomb had gone off, killing everyone but sparing the furniture.
On apprend que le soir de leur départ, hein, ils étaient à table et que tout est resté, eh bien, tel que c'était à ce moment-là.
My mom was the only one of us who could imagine Great Grandma Edie living in a nursing home.
Apparemment, le débat, c'était que la grand-mère vive dans une maison de retraite.
Nothing in the house looked abnormal. There was just too much of it, like a smile with too many teeth.
Un sourire avec trop de
Even
dents.
the fireplace had a story. Edie told me the bricks came from the original house, after it sank.
Donc les briques viendraient de la maison d'origine, d'accord. J'aime bien comment ça s'envole, les lettres. Petite table de salon plutôt sympa. On va voyager donc à travers les souvenirs, hein.
Mom always told me to
Cette
stay out of
famille.
the basement, so I wasn't too surprised when the key didn't fit.
On n'a pas la bonne clé. Ça, c'est sûrement pour après, hein. Donc, Barbara. On voit des photos de tournage, hein, avec des projecteurs. Ils étaient un petit peu en plein déménagement ou emménagement à ce
A lot of
moment-là.
things got left behind in the whirlwind of that last night.
La dernière soirée, hein, donc ils devaient partir.
Edie told me once that every Finch who ever lived is buried somewhere in the library.
Ok, c'est assez glauque. Hein. Les portes ont l'air d'être scellées, mais on peut les observer. Aucune personne âgée vivait ici. Hein.
After Milton disappeared, Mom sealed up all the bedrooms. Then Edie retaliated and drilled peepholes.
On nous propose des lettres.
Whenever people ask me about my family, the first thing they always want to know about is Barbara.
Donc, Barbara, qui était une petite actrice apparemment.
Mom must have locked the third floor stairs on the night we left.
Un étage qui est scellé encore une fois.
Edie's father Odin built the original house.
Donc, Odin qui a construit la maison d'origine. Barbara, 1944-1960. Donc c'est ces chambres qui ont l'air d'être
Barbara was a
des
child star for
souvenirs.
2 years, until America grew out of it.
L'enfant star, donc c'est ouais, c'est des souvenirs, hein, ces pièces. Molly, 1937-47.
Molly always seemed like a girl I could imagine being friends with, if she hadn't died in 1947.
Partie en 1947, hein, elle est décédée. Donc là, on a des jumeaux.
The last time I was in Edith Sr.'s room, I was 10 and she was painting my portrait.
Moi, j'ai l'impression, parce qu'il y a deux noms. On a Eddie, 1917-2010. Et Sven, 1915-1964. Là, Grégory, 76-77.
As a kid, I just assumed every house had peepholes and sealed rooms you weren't allowed inside of.
Bon, pour Grégory, c'est la chambre, c'est une salle de bain. Calvin.
My Grandpa Sam spent 7 years sharing a room with his dead brother, Calvin.
Eux, ils étaient jumeaux aussi. Donc une grande famille à travers le temps. Hein. Donc on
I
nous
spent a
propose la
lot of
première
time
chambre.
playing in Great Uncle Walter's room.
Le grand-oncle
I think my
Walter.
mom sometimes regretted not sealing it up.
Une chambre qui n'a jamais été scellée. On a vraiment l'impression d'être dans l'océan, hein, sous l'eau. Une maison, donc la maison d'origine. Hein.
Lewis told me there were secret passages, but I never believed him.
Et des passages secrets dans la maison. Qui permet bien de rejoindre toutes ces chambres.
Turns out, my mom was really good at keeping secrets. Now it was time to find out what my mom had been afraid of.
Donc découvrons un peu bien l'histoire de cette famille.
Reading this, maybe it sounds like I had a plan. But I had no idea what was behind that door. Just like I had no idea where all this was gonna lead.
On a l'air d'être dans la chambre de la Molly.
I got the sense Edie had spent a lot of time here before my mom sealed the doors.
Ma mère ne scelle les portes. Donc les portes sont toutes scellées.
I grew up looking at Molly's room through the peephole. Molly's gerbil had a tiny bedroom with its own even tinier gerbil cage.
Donc pour une fois, ça y est, elle peut
Being
enfin
inside
visiter
for the
cette
first
chambre.
time, I felt like I'd stepped behind a painting.
Puisqu'elle l'a toujours vu à travers le trou sur la porte. Hein. Donc Molly, 1937-47, c'est parti. Pour son histoire.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to bed without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat. The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it. I thought about eating Christopher, but I held back. I kept eating and eating. I ate a lot of things that night. Then I heard chirping outside my window. It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly, I was a cat. I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared. Mom and Dad didn't even look at me. I jumped and I almost got her. I could tell she was getting really tired. Now I was up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mama bird. I gobbled her up. And suddenly, I was an owl. First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass. Rabbits. I imagined his face looking up and seeing mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off to find something bigger. A mama rabbit. She was almost too big to carry. I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. And suddenly, I was a shark. I rolled off a cliff and into the ocean. Now, I was hungrier than ever. I wanted fat, juicy seeds. I tore off her flipper, and it tasted really good. Grabbed on tight, but I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed. Now I was a monster, and I smelled people everywhere. I was big, but I moved real quiet. I wanted to stop, but also I didn't. After As passenger, I was still hungry. And across the water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe. I got closer and closer. All my stomach started growling. And suddenly, I was me again. I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything. I think it's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
Bien, nous avons vu donc la première histoire hein, de Molly qui ne s'arrête pas de manger. Donc elle s'est transformée en chat, en chouette, et puis eh bien pour finir par se transformer en requin et en espèce de monstre pour redevenir enfin elle-même.
This will be obvious later, but my mom never told me any of these stories. Edie would have, but Mom didn't like bringing up the past.
C'était plutôt
when
pas
we
mal le
adopted
fait
a
qu'elle
stray
puisse se
kitten,
transformer, qu'on incarne un
She
chat
was the
comme
one
ça.
who named it Molly.
Donc voilà pourquoi le chat s'appelle Molly, hein, en l'honneur eh bien, de la petite Molly qui s'est transformée en chat.
I spent a lot of time in Great-Grandma Edie's room.
La chambre de l'arrière-grand-mère. On a ici
Louis died a week before we left,
Lewis.
but Edie had already started to memorialize him.
Qui avait déjà commencé à mettre le souvenir. Donc oui, la grand-mère peint les souvenirs eh bien, des personnages pour en faire comme des tombes.
Edie gave a big interview about a mole man living under the Finch house. My mom was furious.
Une taupe qui vit sous la maison.
I hadn't thought of myself as Edith Jr. for a long, long time.
Des cassettes de quand elle était toute petite.
One summer, they evacuated the island, but Edie refused to go. For a few weeks, she was a celebrity.
Elle refuse de quitter sa maison, ce que je peux comprendre. Bon, 1937, Sven.
When Edie told people Sven was killed by a dragon, she could also have said he was building a dragon-shaped slide that collapsed. She could have, but she didn't.
Donc le Sven, dragon. Apparemment, s'est fait attaquer, soi-disant par un dragon. On verra sûrement son histoire.
Even in her 90s. Sometimes Edie seemed a lot younger than my mother.
Lewis.
Her room was like a museum.
Odin. On a le droit à une autre
For
histoire.
500 years, the Finches have been famous throughout Norway for their fortune and misfortune. Odin Finch buries the latest victims of the family curse, his wife Ingeborg and their newborn son, Johann. On January 7th, 1937, he set sail with his family and his house, hoping to leave the curse behind. But 40-foot waves off the coast of Washington send the house and Odin to the bottom of the sea. Odin's daughter Edie, with husband Sven and baby Molly, step ashore on their new home, Orcas Island. Odin Finch is the first to be buried in the new family cemetery. His daughter Edie is already dreaming of a new Finch house.
Donc voilà, l'histoire est bien
Whatever's wrong with this
simple,
family,
d'Odin.
it goes back a long ways.
Donc chaque histoire va avoir une façon d'être présentée, hein, on le voit là, avec eh bien, ce petit diaporama de photos qui est plutôt bien fait. Là, on est dans une salle
The
de
only
bain.
trace Grandpa Sam's first wife Kay left on the house was the pink bathroom.
Salle de bain rose, un peu trop rose à mon avis. Hein.
It was a pretty big trace.
Une trace de taille. La secret de la salle de bain.
There's a secret in this bathroom. It's in the last place you would look. It isn't in the cupboard. It's hidden in this book.
Encore un passage secret. Calvin Fish.
Sven gave Sam an old camera he'd refurbished. He never put it down.
Quel vieil appareil photo. Le petit aimait bien prendre des photos et il s'est fait son petit coin ici pour développer tranquillement et bien ses photos à l'abri également de la lumière.
From the paintings on the
Milton.
wall, it was clear my brother Milton had been here before me.
Moi j'aime bien le principe aussi. Le principe secret, là. Donc la fameuse chambre des deux frères. Hein. Deux frères qui se partagent la chambre dans deux univers différents. Hein. L'un qui est plus tourné vers l'espace et l'autre eh bien, dans le côté militaire. Excellent, et j'aime beaucoup en tout cas comment ils ont présenté ça. Hein.
I knew Grandpa Sam had a twin, and that he never talked about him.
Ça se passe en 1961, donc en pleine conquête spatiale hein, pour la partie là.
I guess my grandpa didn't like history any more than my mom did.
Donc Calvin, 1950-61, donc il avait 11 ans.
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it. My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom, and he did. At Barbara's funeral, we swore we'd never be afraid again, and he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
Sam! Calvin! Dinner's ready! Coming!
But that day, he finally made up his mind to do it. I told him going around was impossible. Maybe if I hadn't said that,
Calvin! I'm not gonna tell you again!
maybe if the wind hadn't picked up, then maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it. I think he'd already made up his mind. That's what I want to remember about my brother. The day he made up his mind to fly. And he did.
Calvin's story felt strangely familiar. When I was younger, I remember trying to do the exact same
Bien,
thing.
donc Calvin qui s'est envolé en faisant de la balançoire. Du moins, c'est comme ça qu'ils l'ont
After the
présenté.
funeral,
Pour que ça fasse
Edie
plus
roped off
beau.
Calvin's half of the room.
Voilà, donc le frère ne voulait plus qu'on aille dans cette partie de la chambre, hein, tout simplement pour garder bien le...
Mom said Grandpa Sam
son
enlisted
frère.
at 18 and never set foot in the room again.
Allez.
The passages were a pretty tight fit. They'd obviously been built for smaller hands and bellies.
Oui, des passages qui ont été conçus pour des enfants plus jeunes, hein, et non... pour une personne de son âge.
Growing up, I always thought of Barbara as a child star.
Nous voici dans la chambre de Barbara. Une enfant star. Ok, donc la chambre de Barbara. Cet enfant star
I never
d'Hollywood,
thought
hein.
about how hard it must have been for her afterwards.
De 1944 à 1960. Une enfant star qui, en grandissant malheureusement, eh bien, a perdu de sa notoriété. Et point de vue de sa tenue, on en déduit qu'elle est devenue serveuse. Et moi, je vous propose eh bien, de découvrir son histoire.
Of all the stories people wrote about Barbara's death, I'm surprised Edie saved this one.
Old Jack here with another ghastly tale inspired by America's most unfortunate family. I'm calling it The Surprise Ending of Barbara Finch. As a child star, Barbara was famous for her scream. Now at 16, she was all washed up, a has-been. But in a lucky break, she'd been asked to perform her signature scream at a local convention for monster movie fans. It was just the boost her career needed. Unfortunately, her scream hadn't aged well.
Getting better. I think you just need the right motivation.
Her biggest fan and current boyfriend, Rick, was about to demonstrate when...
Now that was a great scream.
It was Barbara's father, Sven. He'd slipped into a table saw and had to be rushed to the emergency room. So Barbara got stuck babysitting her youngest brother, Walter. Her convention comeback was cancelled.
Okay, I'm hearing frustration, but I'm not hearing terror. What if I tried...
A gang of hoodlums in Halloween masks have been terrorizing Orcas Island tonight. Police are urging residents to...
That came from the basement.
You're right! Also, I loved your delivery on that. Why is your basement door locked?
Because my dad likes making puzzles and secret passages. There's a key hidden in the music box. The secret is to keep winding and winding until finally the key pops out.
Thanks, babe. I'll be back in a sec.
20 minutes later, Rick hadn't returned. So Barbara went to look for him, right on cue. She reached for the music box. And as she wound the key, she listened for Rick, but the house was silent. She found Rick's crutch and imagined the worst.
The gang's leader is the infamous Hookman killer, Dr. Carl Hamill, who impaled and then ate his family 10 years ago tonight.
The old fridge rattled and grew still.
Oh dear!
Oh!
Rick?
Barb, relax. I was just trying to scare you to help you find your scream.
Well, I'm not scared, Rick. I'm furious.
Then act furious. All I'm getting from you now is that you're hurt and confused and you're...
She threw him out, but she kept a little something to remember him by.
Barb, have you seen my other crutch?
And she was still holding it when she fell asleep watching the late picture show. Hours later...
Barbara! Walter, what's going on up there? Ah! Okay, I'm coming up, but if this is a trick, you're dead, Walter.
Orcas Island police describe the man as 6 feet tall, with a steel hook for a hand. Residents are urged to lock all doors and windows and notify the police of any suspicious activity.
Barbara turned, saw the hook man, and was speechless. He was quite smashing. And there he was. He couldn't get enough of Barbara.
Okay, Barbara, there's gotta be another way out of here.
That night, she played her part beautifully. Molly's door hadn't been opened in years. The hinges groaned. He wasn't moving, but she sensed the story might not be over yet. The hookman had vanished. She listened for his breathing, but all she heard was... At the door, she heard whispering. It was coming from inside the house.
Oh dear.
The monsters had come to surprise her. For Barbara, it was a dream come true. Then she saw what kind of monsters they were, and she realized what was about to happen. She was going to be famous. And with her final breath, Barbara Finch gave the performance of her life. I wasn't there myself, but I hear Barbara was magnificent. Poor girl. She had a taste for stardom. But unfortunately, so did her fans. Of course, the police blamed it all on poor Rick, who disappeared the same night. And little Walter? Hiding under his bed the whole time. He took it all pretty hard, but that's another story. As for Barbara, tucked inside the music box is all they ever found of her. Her ear. Now that's what I call a real eerie tale.
Edie told me all Barbara wanted was to be remembered, as absurd as that comic was. Maybe what Edie saw was a happy ending.
Bien, voilà pour l'histoire bien, de Barbara. Qui donc était nostalgique de sa célébrité qu'elle avait étant enfant. Une histoire présentée sous forme de
I guess now I
bande
know why Mom
dessinée.
didn't like me playing with the music box.
Donc on nous a clairement en même temps indiqué la fameuse boîte à musique qui va nous permettre de découvrir un peu plus l'histoire cette maison. On va tourner tout ça. Avec la musique de Barbara. Qui nous permet de récupérer la clé de la cave. Nous avons un billard. La fameuse cave que l'on a pu voir à travers la bande dessinée.
Mom said the basement was off limits, unless I wanted another tetanus shot.
Faire un appel contre le tétanos. Donc c'est ici que Sven travaillait. Que le
I
père de
saw
Barbara.
Edie sneak down to the basement once, carrying packages. I thought maybe she was hiding presents. It turned out she was hiding a lot more than that.
Un message secret.
I remember asking Mom once about where Walter had gone. She said after Barbara died, he got as far away as he could.
Walter, le petit.
If there's a
frère
pattern in all these stories,
Barbara qui s'était cachée. Qui s'était retranchée, eh bien.
I think it's that
La
none of us
maison,
has gotten very far.
Pensant que, eh bien, c'était bientôt la fin du monde. Donc, jusqu'en 2005, il est resté bloqué là-dessus.
Goodbye, everyone. I can't believe I've been down here for 30 years. On that first day, after the shaking started, I didn't think I'd survive the week. But after a few days, I settled into a routine. That's what kept me sane. Having a schedule, living for today. I always expected to be dead tomorrow. But if you wait long enough, you get used to anything. Even a monster on the other side of the door starts to feel normal. Almost friendly. And then one day, everything just stopped. Whatever that thing was, it was gone. Maybe it got tired of waiting. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid. It's been a week now, the longest in 30 years. I'm done waiting. I have to leave. Well, I still can. I know it's out there, somewhere. Whatever killed Barbara and Molly and Calvin. Maybe this is all a mistake. But I need to stop living the same day, even if it kills me. Whatever's out there, I want you to know I'm ready for it. I'm going to appreciate all of it, especially the food. I don't mind if I only have a year left, or a month, or a single week. I'd be happy with one meal a day. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
Walter died when I was 6. I can't believe my mom never told me he was down here.
Donc Walter, son histoire, hein, un petit garçon qui a vécu pratiquement toute sa
I'm
vie
sure my mom was trying to protect me.
caché en croyant qu'un monstre l'attendait, alors qu'en vérité, malheureusement, ce n'était qu'un train qui passait dans le coin. Donc il s'était créé tout un monde avec ce tableau, hein, pour avoir l'impression bien d'être dans cette vie normale, tout simplement. Il en a eu marre d'attendre, caché, évidemment.
Maybe she was afraid I'd end up like Walter. But if she never told me about an uncle under the house, I can only imagine what else she was hiding. I don't want to make the same mistakes she made.
C'est linéaire, hein, on
Trying to bury
suppose
something
de
that's
suivre
still
l'histoire.
alive. Now that there's only one of us left, or maybe 2, I thought it was time I heard the stories for myself and found out what happened to everyone else. But now I'm worried the stories themselves might be the problem. Maybe we believed so much in a family curse, we made it real.
Ils pensent qu'ils ont une malédiction qui les emporte tous un par un. Et à la fin du chemin de fer,
I don't know if I should even be writing this.
voici donc à l'extérieur, hein, de cette maison avec des séquelles. On le voit, une
Maybe it'd
chaise.
be better if all this just died with me.
Qui est là, hein, tout cet endroit qui a
But I
l'air à
thought you should
l'abandon.
know about your family. And the history you're a part of.
Qui nous guide.
Though to be honest, I feel as lost as you probably do right now. I think the people in these stories believed them, for what that's worth. And when you look at the house, that history of imagination and stubbornness and madness, any of it seems possible.
La maison, hein, on y retourne. Ça permet, eh bien, de voir l'extérieur.
I think we've been surrounded by death for so long, we've just gotten used to it. What kind of family finishes building a cemetery before starting the house?
La
It's
malédiction est
embarrassing for
tellement
me to admit
présente
this, but
qu'il y a un cimetière dans la maison.
the pet cemetery made me more uncomfortable than the human one.
Ainsi que tout, eh
3
bien,
of the gerbils are mine.
les animaux qui sont là.
2 had been my fault. Sven built the house, but it was Edie who designed the cemetery.
Donc, voilà tout le personnage pour le moment que nous avons vu. Hein, la petite Molly qui, ses rêves se transformaient en chat. Calvin qui rêvait de partir à l'aventure et de voler et qui au final avec sa balançoire bien était tellement vite qu'il s'est envolé. Sven qui avec sa scie malheureusement s'est blessé. Hein. Eddie, personnage que nous n'avons pas encore vraiment vu, mais qui est donc la grand-mère de ce personnage que nous contrôlons. Walter, qui, une fois sorti, bien, s'est fait malheureusement percuter par un train. Barbara, qui voulait tout simplement, eh bien, avoir la gloire avec elle.
I'm sure Odin's monument had been Edie's idea. My mom was always trying to move on, but for Edie, the past never went away.
Ainsi que bien, ces personnages, quand ils sont arrivés aux États-Unis, hein, avec la fameuse
She
maison.
could see it poking out of the water at low tide.
Cette maison qui était à la base prévue hein, pour leur nouvelle vie. Et au final,
Edie said she dreamed about the
submergée,
old
hein.
house every night.
La maison originale. Qui à la base, eh bien, aurait dû être leur maison.
Edie's side was always easier for me to understand. But the older I get, the more I can see where my mom was coming from. Her dad had been pretty strict, but it wasn't enough to save her brothers. She was just trying to do better.
Ensuite, d'autres personnages que nous ne connaissons pas encore leurs histoires.
She lost 2 of her brothers, just like I did. I get why she tried so hard to protect us.
Ces personnages que nous ne connaissons pas encore leur histoire, mais que nous allons bien finir par découvrir.
There's so many things I wish I could ask my mom now. Part of me thinks this is what she wanted all along. For me to come back someday and find everything out for myself. But looking back on it now, If she told me there was going to be so much climbing, I never would have come when I was 22 weeks pregnant.
Le personnage est enceinte.
I never met Grandpa Sam, but I think he and my mom had a lot in common.
Grand-père.
They were both pretty intense. Sam spent his life shooting photos, but Mom said he got nervous being in front of the camera. I guess we're all afraid of something.
Grand-père hein, qui adorait prendre des photos, hein, qui au final a...
Instead of hiding from death, Sam seemed to go out of his way to meet it.
qui apparemment a changé un peu bien de lieu, hein, si je ne me trompe pas. Ça a l'air d'être le petit garçon que nous avions vu dans la fameuse chambre en commun avec son frère. Donc Sam, 1950 à 1983.
Dawn, I promise, you'll never forget this weekend.
Yes, sir.
These memories are gonna last a lifetime.
Hmm? Am I gonna have to shoot anything?
It's a hunting trip, Dawn. Shooting is strongly encouraged.
What?
Perfect.
It's gonna rain the whole weekend, isn't it? You'll never forget this weekend, Dad.
That's this. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna take some pictures, okay?
Just be careful. That camera's older than you are.
You're right, Dad. It's starting to clear up. Still freezing, though.
Definitely should not have drunk all that coffee. Hey!
That's a keeper.
I'm just saying, I'm not always gonna be here, Dawn. You'll need to remember this stuff, if you want to survive.
I'll be fine, Dad.
You know who else thought he was gonna be fine?
Some guy who died.
Dawn, I'm being serious.
I know, Dad. You're always serious. Doesn't being out here make you want to chill out?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't been out here in 20 years.
Dad!
Good eyes, Dawn. Before you take the shot, let me get a picture of you.
Dad,
Let me get behind you.
do I have to do this?
Dawn, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to survive, you'll need to be strong. Great shot, Dawn! I'm proud of you, Dawn. Always remember that, okay?
Dad, it's twitching. I think
That's
it's
totally
still...
normal, Dawn. Just focus on the camera. Try not to think about...
Dad! Of all these stories, that's the one I wish most that my mom had told me.
Voilà pour Sam. Le père, hein, tout simplement, eh bien, de notre personnage, le grand-père plutôt de notre personnage, donc le père, sa pauvre mère.
After Sam died, my mom and Edie got really close. They'd both lost a lot.
Nous voici dans une autre chambre. Une chambre avec un petit bébé. Le petit Grégory.
Dear Kay, do you remember the way Gregory used to laugh when he thought he was alone? Like something funny was happening, but only he could see it. I think he saw things the rest of us don't.
Gregory, it's time to... Hold on, sweetie. Hello? Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
I wonder what he saw. What his world was like. Reminded me so much of Calvin. Lost in his imagination. Whatever it was he saw, it sure made him happy. Silly it sounds. But I worried about the baby being too happy. But I could feel him slipping away.
Sorry about that, Gregory.
I know you did everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
Damn it. Hold on, I don't want Gregory to hear this.
I wish he could have told us about the world he saw. everything. But I know what happened wasn't your fault. I'm sure he's happy. And he'd want you to be happy too. Good luck, Kay. Love, Sam.
Donc voilà pour cette histoire hein, de ce petit enfant qui porte un nom quand même assez, assez spécial, hein, surtout pour eh bien, son histoire, sa destinée, hein, voilà, qui est bien triste eh bien, pour ce petit enfant qui n'avait rien demandé, qui prenait
I can't
simplement
imagine
son
my
bain.
mom ever writing poetry, and yet
Puis il y a le petit frère encore, bien Gus, hein, avec le
A
poème
poem for
pour
Gus, who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard. My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, we don't need a stepmom, were the words that
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But Gus declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger. The wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent. The rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made. The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. But all my father said to this was, "Make the music louder." I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam. But I didn't, until we found you.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
Donc voilà pour encore un frère hein, qui, lors d'un mariage, jouait avec le cerf-volant, une tempête s'est levée. Et malheureusement, eh bien, s'est fait avoir eh bien, par ces objets hein, qui étaient emportés.
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get.
La mère de notre personnage a décidé de déménager et de dormir eh bien, dans cet endroit pour éviter eh bien, les mauvais souvenirs.
Religion was another thing my mom never talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died.
Pour rappel, hein, son père qui était mort sous ses yeux à cause du cerf.
She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay.
Elle est partie. Hein. Elle a rencontré le père et bien.
My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English.
Donc elle est partie en Inde pour enseigner l'anglais. Et donc on le voit, le petit ventre arrondi de notre
Louis
personnage.
was born a year later.
On montre que notre personnage attend un enfant.
When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go.
Il est né peu de temps après.
I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back.
Milton, Lewis et Edith, c'est là qu'ils sont revenus à la mort du père.
The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that.
Donc la maison s'est agrandie au fur et à mesure. Là, pourquoi elle est toute
And for a
biscornue?
while, things were good. Almost normal.
Comme s'ils se sont repliés, on dirait comme une petite salle de classe. Hein. Comme s'ils s'étaient eh bien, repliés sur eux-mêmes.
The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
Faire un château à Milton.
I think Edie was happy to finally have another painter in the family.
Milton qui aime la peinture apparemment. Milton qui est de 1992. Il n'y a pas de date, mais on ne sait pas eh bien, ce qu'il est devenu.
Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush. I was 4 when Milton disappeared.
Donc Milton qui aimait dessiner, hein, et il a complètement disparu, emporté eh bien sûrement par son imagination, sa peinture. Il avait une imagination débordante.
Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors.
Comme à son habitude, la mère a scellé, bien évidemment, les portes.
Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out.
Voir, Milton.
After Milton disappeared, the only thing he left behind was a room full of paintings.
Chambre pleine de peinture.
Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Louis blamed himself. After he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery. Everyone always told me to stay out of Louis's room. Except Louis.
La chambre de Lewis.
Louis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on.
Une chambre colorée, hein.
Louis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
Lewis qui aimait bien jouer à la console. Il était gamer dans l'âme.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that had not names. He knew it was all in his head. But he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more. I worried about him then. Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Louis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination, so he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor, and he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis. He started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis. Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Louis kept sailing on. In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a handsome queen. The queen was on her own quest for sinister serpents. He followed the sound of her silver harp. His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination. But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him. He began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt. I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions. Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on inviting them. His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do. Bend down his head. And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
Donc les 8 hein, qui travaillaient dans une poissonnerie, qui au final rêvaient d'autre chose puisque c'était un travail de routine, à répéter toujours les mêmes gestes, était donc parti hein, dans ses rêveries qui lui ont été fatales.
On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie.
Et c'est là que la mère a décidé donc bien de
I'm not sure if she
quitter
wanted to make it easier or harder.
ce lieu.
I wish we'd stayed.
La chambre de notre perso, ou le petit appart hein,
But I understand why we left.
où elle vivait avec sa mère, recluse dans une partie de la maison, afin eh bien, tout simplement de ne pas souffrir de ses souvenirs.
My mom ended up leaving everything behind.
Au final, a décidé de tout abandonner. Pour oublier le chagrin.
What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another.
Voici la
All that's
chambre
left now was to tell you about that last night.
d'Edith. On va se remémorer cette dernière soirée.
That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories! I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning, okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it, but she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
Bien, voilà pour ce qui était bien de ce jeu, Remains of Edith Finch. Un petit jeu qui nous raconte une histoire sur une famille et qui est malheureusement une famille déchirée par cette malédiction où chaque personne va disparaître, que ce soit un coup du destin ou par accident. En tout cas, c'était une histoire qui était magnifique, très bien, que ce soit au niveau de l'ambiance sonore, les musiques, comment c'est présenté avec les différentes histoires de ces souvenirs avec différents formats, que ce soit en version BD, la petite fille qui se transforme en chat, le petit garçon qui disparaît mais qui est représenté par différents dessins. et j'en passe. Et en tout cas, c'était un très très beau jeu que je voulais faire depuis un petit moment sur la chaîne. Et il est vrai que ce jeu, il est assez court puisqu'il est très linéaire. Donc voilà pourquoi je le fais là. Je me suis dit c'est le bon moment pour vous le faire. En tout cas, j'espère que ce petit jeu vous a plu. N'oubliez pas de revenir en commentaire et de me dire quelle a été l'histoire qui vous a le plus marqué. Évidemment, comme d'habitude, le petit pouce qui me permet de voir que vous avez vu le contenu que je vous ai proposé. Et puis bien évidemment, si vous tombez sur ce let's play et que le contenu vous a plu, n'hésitez pas à vous abonner et à activer la petite cloche qui vous permet de recevoir les notifications quand je sors une nouvelle vidéo ou quand je fais un live. Allez, à très bientôt.